Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. For those of you who may be new, my name is Lynette. And today I wanted to share 5 books that have changed my life. Obviously, the question for today's video is going to be, what book has changed your life? Please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys there. So each of the books that I'm going to be sharing with you are books that encompass different lifestyle changes that I've made that I now share with you on my YouTube channel. They are also books on emotional health as well as faith and spirituality. So a friend recommended to me a book called Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. I'm sure most of you have heard of it. If you have not, it is a fabulous book. And basically Brene decides to do research on vulnerability. And what she finds in her research across genders and nationalities, across different cultures and ethnicities, you know, just across the span of like people, like humans, right? What she found is that vulnerability is the ultimate key to true intimacy, and it's ultimately what allows you to be known. If you're vulnerable and honest with yourself, then you know your true self, and if you're vulnerable and honest with others, then others know you as well. I feel like you enter into new phases of your life where you're forced to become vulnerable again. So for instance, most recently, becoming a mother has felt incredibly vulnerable. You feel like you're risking so much and you're pouring so much time and energy and sacrifice into this little life, and it is scary and it is vulnerable because you love your child, and if anything were to ever happen to them, or if you felt like you failed in some way as a parent, like that's a vulnerable, risky endeavor to raise a child or to raise multiple children, but it's worth the risk anyway. It's just a really solid book. If you want to read material that will transform your relationships and give you a greater sense of self and a greater sense of security in yourself, then you definitely need to pick up Daring Greatly. Number 2 on my list is The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. I said that right. I always mispronounce her name, Marie Kondo. I'm sure most of you have at least heard of this book, even if you haven't read it. But this is the book that set me on my decluttering and organizing and more minimalist life journey. When I read this book, I was just like, whoa, take a step back here. Why am I holding on to all the things that I have? Are they really serving a purpose in my life? Are they bringing me joy? Are they just adding like stress? Do I have just like weird, sad emotions attached to this particular item? Like, let's evaluate what's going on here really. So she really makes decluttering and organizing a lot more about the emotional and like personal things that are going on within you than she does about it just being like an outside act that you do, like, oh, I organized my house a little bit or I decluttered. She kind of, you know, she goes a little deeper than that. This is the book that really enabled us to live in a 1-bedroom apartment for almost 2 years with our daughter. This is the book that, you know, set off my whole decluttering phase when I was initially nesting while I was pregnant. And this is the book that still inspires me to continue to declutter and minimize. If you haven't read this, you need to read this. I feel like everybody needs to read this. And you know, it is life-changing, guys. It really is. And number 3 on my list is called Boundaries by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. This is all about emotional health and relationships. You can see there's a little bit of a theme going on here in the books that I chose. This was the book that gave me language to describe dysfunctional relationships, unhealthy cycles that I saw in myself, in my family, unhealthy ways that we coped, unhealthy ways we argued, unhealthy ways we like approach situations. I mean, it really gave me language for that. And really this book is about boundaries. So what are your boundaries? What are your limitations as a human? And how do you communicate that to others? Are you able to communicate that to others, or do you allow people to take over your life? Are you being backed into a corner? Do you have the capacity to say no to someone, even if that means disappointing them? So there's like a lot of questions that this book kind of makes you reflect and to ask yourself. And really this book gave me the courage to be able to push back on a lot of unhealthy expectations that I even had in my work environment at one point, where I was just expected to do way too much. It was very unhealthy, very stressful. If you feel like you're in some dysfunctional relationships, dysfunctional family relationships, you definitely need to read this. It's super good. Number 4 on my list should come to no surprise to most of you, because it's a lot of the content that I share on this channel, and that is Zero Waste Home by Bea Johnson. So obviously I didn't know about the zero waste movement until like maybe, I think it's only been 2 years, guys. I've only known about this movement for 2 years. But I really had no concept for like what being zero waste meant. And I guess you can say I didn't really care or even paid attention to the trash that I produced, the waste that I produced, the amount of things that I consumed. I just wasn't thinking about that. And this book really kind of set the stage for me to take a step back and actually see what I was doing and the amount of trash that I was creating, how wasteful I could be. And it gave me, time to pause and to reevaluate in a lot of ways how I could change to reduce my carbon footprint and how I could live a more minimal and zero waste lifestyle. I'd say if you're reading it because you're curious about zero waste, don't forget to take a few steps back and not to feel like you have to do everything that she does right away. She constantly throughout her book talks about how it's a process and it took her a lot of time. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to the point she's at, because she's like I said, she's so dang good at it. But I can refer back to this book, I can flip through its pages, be inspired once again to kind of continue on in my journey. It's a fantastic book. So like I've said, for all the books that I'm sharing with you today, you need to go read it. And number 5 on my list is probably my favorite book on this entire list. It is a fabulous book. It's fabulous. But it's called 1000 Gifts by Ann Voskamp. The way Ann writes is very lyrical and poetic, and there's this kind of melancholic tone that she has throughout her book, but it's also extremely hopeful and just beautiful writing. There's so many times where I've picked up this book and have read just like a morsel of the goodness that's in it, and then have had to close the book and just let that like permeate my being. Like, it's just so soul good, if that makes sense. This book is all about cultivating gratitude in your life and how gratitude really is the key, she says, or the precursor to God's miracle. She talks about gratitude increasing our joy, our happiness, decreasing our anxieties and depression. So she talks about like the tangible ways that it actually changes us. But she also, of course, goes into the spiritual component of gratitude and what that means in our relationship with God, and just the power that gratitude has. The whole book is framed from the worldview of suffering, and how in the world could a good God allow suffering. And she prefaces the book with her little sister's death that she witnessed on their farm. It is a beautiful book about faith and hope and gratitude and thanksgiving, and finding beauty in life when it's really dark and really hard. If there's any book off this list that I wish you guys can go read right now, it would definitely be this one. Those are my 5 books. These books are all fantastic. They're all very different, all told by different people with different passions, and all these authors are really good at what they're doing, so they know what they're talking about in their books. Let me know down in the comments one of the most life-changing books you guys have ever read, and that's a tall order. But yeah, let me know. Until next time, you guys, I will talk to you then. Bye.